Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a massive macroeconomic mystery unfolding right now in the Philippines. We're going to look at corruption's drag on national growth and how systemic graft literally puts the brakes on a country's economic progress.
So here's where things get kind of weird. Back on July 2nd, 2026, the World Bank made huge headlines by declaring that the Philippines had officially reached upper middle income status. On paper, it sounds like this massive victory, right? The culmination of decades of reform. But if you talk to everyday people on the street, no way. They're feeling the exact opposite. They are feeling the pinch of stagnant wages and rising costs. It really begs the question, if the country is getting richer, why do the people feel poorer?
Well, this comparison really hits the nail on the head. On one hand, you've got this shiny statistical milestone, a gross national income, or GNI, per capita of $4,850. But in lived reality, nearly 28% of Filipinos remain highly vulnerable to poverty, living entirely paycheck to paycheck. You know how it is. A national average just takes the whole economic pie and slices it by the population. It completely masks the reality of wealth distribution. One medical emergency, a lost job, or a bad typhoon, and boom, years of progress are just wiped out for vulnerable families. The stats might say the threshold is crossed, but let's be real. A statistical threshold doesn't buy your groceries.
All right, Section 1, the data behind the milestone. Let's look at the numbers.
Okay, so you might be wondering, how do they actually calculate this stuff? Because they aren't just pulling numbers out of thin air. To understand it, we have to follow the data flow. The World Bank relies on official data straight from the country's own agencies, mainly the Philippine Statistics Authority. That raw data gets passed up the chain, and then the World Bank's Development Data Group applies something called the Atlas method. This is absolutely crucial because it smooths everything out. It accounts for things like international inflation and those crazy short-term exchange rate swings over a 3-year period.
So, bottom line here, while the World Bank makes the final official call and ensures global standards, the actual underlying math comes straight from the Philippine government's own statistical agencies. The data is verified, it's real. They objectively hit the milestone.
Moving on to Section 2, the hidden drag on growth. But here is where the mystery really deepens. Despite getting this massive upgrade from the World Bank, actual economic growth slammed on the brakes. It dropped to a 5-year low of 4.4% in 2025. I mean, how do you hit a huge economic upgrade while simultaneously slowing down? Well, if we follow the data, we find a massive hidden drag on the whole system. Global models estimate average annual losses of $1.5 billion directly linked to corruption and weak institutions at just the central government level. $1.5 billion. That is pure friction, slowing down the engine of national progress day in and day out.
And honestly, this isn't just some abstract economic theory. When the president recently exposed widespread corruption in flood control projects, public construction spending essentially vanished while the government tightened its purse strings to clean house. Finance Secretary Ralph Recto even pointed out that without this corruption-related spending freeze, the economy could have been growing at 6 to 6.2% instead of that sluggish 4.4%. This is definitive proof right here. Graft isn't just a moral failing, it actively, mathematically drains national growth.
Which brings us to Section 3, how corruption drains economies. Let's break down the actual mechanics of this damage. How exactly does this villain steal wealth from the economy? According to the Asian Development Bank and the OECD, corruption basically suffocates growth in 4 key ways. First up, a direct fiscal drain, money just literally vanishing into ghost projects. Second, crushed investor confidence. Think about it. When contracts are rigged, foreign and domestic investors freak out. They either demand huge risk premiums or just take their capital elsewhere entirely. Third, burdensome administrative barriers. Corruption absolutely loves red tape, forcing businesses into costly, deliberate, bureaucratic mazes. And finally, misallocation of resources. Instead of building vital infrastructure, capital gets rerouted into useless political patronage networks to reward loyalists.
To put this abstract concept into perspective, we just need to look at the recent flood control scandal. This one single issue wasted up to $2 billion on substandard, unfinished, or literally non-existent projects since 2023. $2 billion. Just imagine what an economy could do if that was actually invested in schools, hospitals, or real climate resilience instead of just washing away in fake contracts.
All right, let's dig deeper in Section 4, the structural root of corruption. So, this brings us to a really critical point in our explainer. We see what's happening, and we definitely see the cost. But the burning question is, why?
Why on earth, despite decades of public outrage and strict anti-corruption laws already on the books, does this whole system just keep going? Why is it so incredibly tough to fix?
Well, the answer hits you right in the face when you look at the political landscape. Research from the Philippine Institute for Development Studies shows that an overwhelming majority of local and national offices are totally controlled by political dynasties. Get this, 80% of provincial governors, 75% of city mayors, and 67% of House members. It's like a monopoly. Power is heavily concentrated in the hands of just a few dominant families.
Researchers actually have a name for this dynamic. They call it elite capture. Basically, it's a structural setup where the state is treated more like an instrument for family enrichment than actual public service. Under elite capture, things like government contracts or big investment opportunities are handed out based on who you know, not what you can do. This concentration of power totally kills competition, shreds checks and balances, and practically guarantees a high risk of corruption.
And this leads us to the ultimate catch-22 of the whole system. The 1987 Constitution explicitly prohibits political dynasties. I mean, the mandate is sitting right there in the foundational law of the land. But the legislature hasn't passed an enabling law to actually enforce it for 36 years. Why? Well, because you need the legislature to pass laws against dynasties, but the legislature is made up of those exact same dynasties. Actually, scratch that. It's got a catch-22. It's just a system structurally designed to protect itself.
So where do we go from here? Section 5, the path to real progress.
So, how does a country actually take this macroeconomic upgrade on paper and make it a reality for everyday people? Well, expert consensus points to a very specific sequence of structural reforms to finally eliminate this drag on growth. Step 1, obviously, is actually fulfilling that constitutional mandate by passing an anti-dynasty law. That's the starting point. But it can't end there. Step 2 is strengthening local institutional capacity, basically making sure civil servants and auditors have actual power and independence. Step 3, reforming campaign finance to level the playing field so regular, non-dynastic candidates even stand a chance. And step 4 is shifting away from this personality-driven drama and building genuine political parties based on actual policy platforms.
But let's be real, just waiting around for top-down reform is not going to cut it. Bottom-up accountability is absolutely crucial here. We've got to leverage technology and civil society, things like freedom of information requests, real-time tracking of public procurement, and citizen audit initiatives. These tools allow local communities to actively monitor projects themselves. It completely bypasses those compromised top-down institutions and puts the power of oversight right into the hands of a tech-savvy public.
I want to leave you with this final, really provocative realization from our source material, because it perfectly sums up the ultimate hurdle to unlocking the nation's true economic potential. Quote, "The challenge is that the people with the power to do it are the ones who benefit most from not doing it." Think about that. How does a country incentivize the exact people holding all the cards to change the rules of the game? That right there is the billion-dollar question standing between statistical milestones and true, felt prosperity. Thanks for hanging out with me on this explainer, and keep exploring the data.